Any tips on how to get as much meaning as I can out of a Seder by myself? Well, I'd love to know what you guys are going to be doing regarding this and what kind of tips you guys can let everybody know about.
Right. I mean, it's tough. Again, you know, believe it or not, you know, I have five kids. When I get that alone time, for me, it's like, for me, it's precious. You know, sometimes I even, you know, have to wake up with the kids at night. So for me to get that alone time, I look at it as a very precious time, so I can really focus, because I have a hard time focusing on things. I would say get some good books. There's amazing books on the Haggadah, and use that as a, you know, Rabbi Katz has a beautiful class on meditation and Pesach Seder, and maybe just, you know, go into each step and look at it as a psychological step, and go deep in these steps. Like, be more mindful of the things you're doing. You know, take this chance as a chance to read and buy books that you never would have had before. Because normally, you know, I remember in Israel, going to Israel in Jerusalem, you know, I was there for the first night of the Seder, and the second night, people were taking selfies with matzahs. I mean, this is what the Seder in Jerusalem looked like. In a Jewish hotel, they're taking selfies with the matzah. So sometimes they're posting so many pictures about, oh, look where I am, and they can't even enjoy the moment. You know, so I would say, enjoy the moment. I never seen so many selfies. Now that nobody's taking selfies, they're the mask. But I was literally in the Seder, and people were taking pictures of themselves with matzahs and a selfie. I'm like, you missed the whole point. The next moment is not better than this moment. I think that's what the Yetzer Hara is always telling us, that you have to be somewhere else. It's not enough to connect right now. You always have to be somewhere else. And that's why you can have a group of 4 or 5 people together, and yet everybody's on the phone, and they're connecting to the outside world. Connect inside. I think that's really the message. Start connecting inside. Once you connect inside, you don't need to connect outside.
Yeah, just totally building what Gedale is saying. Listen, I understand that the grass is always greener, as they say, but, you know, a few people have asked me this in the last week, you know, what are you supposed to do in a Seder by yourself? It's terrible. I'm sorry to say this out loud, but, you know, I love my family. I adore my family. I'm blessed to have a family. I would love to have a Seder by myself. That would just be the highest of the high. I adore my Seders and I adore my children, and I'm certainly not complaining. But the grass is always greener. You know, when you're by yourself, you go, if only had a family people around me. When you're with a family, there's so much Kabbalah, there's so much Chassidus, there's so unbelievable secrets, there's so many meditations. And I'm constantly taking care of my kids and keeping them entertained and engaging the students, whatever, to be able to sit on one point, right? To be able to sit deeply. You know, the essence of the Pesach Seder is basically 2 simple things. One is we remember everything that happened in Egypt, right? All the stories, all the details, and we go through it, knowing that there's an unbelievable secret about the structure of all exile and all redemption, of all loss of self, of all rediscovery of self, of all enslavement, of all freedom is in that paradigm. And then after we tell the story, the Haggadah literally cues you and says, Chayiv Adam lirases atzmo kehilu hu yotze mimitzrayim, b'chol dor v'dor. Right now, you're supposed to see yourself in that particular exile. What is your exile? What is your challenge? What your enslavement is? And you're supposed to set yourself free by realizing Hashem can help me overcome all my blocks, all my addictions, all my pains, to completely say, Hashem, you can change it all, to connect to that, live with that, to eat with that meditation. And you're really supposed to sit on that until it gets into your kishkas on this night. There's tremendous hashpah, tremendous energy and light. You know, the whole night is a spiritual, supernatural, get out of jail free card. And it's to the degree that you can choose to step out of your own exile, to own it, to acknowledge it, to let it go, and know and visualize and see that Hashem can turn it all around literally in a second. So the fact that you get to sit there and go deep and, you know, really explore it and really feel it and really understand it, is it self-chavis? Is it self-freedom? Well, I understand that some people don't have the meditational skill sets. They haven't heard the classes. You know, you can go to YouTube. There's lots of free classes where I teach meditation. There's tons of great classes on Chassidus and the structure of the Seder, as much as you can get your hands on next 48 hours. But the first liberation of self is to know exactly where you are, is exactly where Hashem wants you to be, to have the highest possible breakthrough of your life. And therefore, if you're alone at the Seder, your Seder is dead and you're finished. If the whole night you're going, but if only I was somewhere else, then I would be having a better, higher experience. I want you to imagine Bishvili Nivo Olam, Hashem created the whole coronavirus, the whole global meltdown to get you alone of the holiest night of the year to do whatever you have to do. And just by thinking with that attitude, worlds can open up for you. That's what I want to tell you.
I think we also have to transform the mindset of being lonely to alone. It's different if you're lonely, because that's a sense of despair instead of saying I'm alone. Big difference between loneliness, and I did a class on this. Loneliness is a state of mind, but being alone is where everything. I mean, this is where all the kalim. This is where a person has amazing opportunity to connect to his higher self. I mean, I tell you the truth. The majority, 99% of my breakthroughs have been being alone. So it's not something that it doesn't happen with a lot of people. So I think we need to stop saying lonely. Start focusing on being alone. And and there's a great book called Transforming Loneliness by Rabbi Israel Rob, and he speaks about every single one of the avot had the mission alone. Nobody had a posse when they did these missions. Yitzhak Avinu had to fought with the angel alone. Noah was in the whale. I'm sorry. Yonah was in the whale alone. Sarah Mena everything was alone. There was not a group of people. So I think people need to transform that mindset from loneliness to alone. Because loneliness is a victim mindset. Aloneness is an empowering mindset.
Wow. That's a totally awesome approach. I mean, that's the essence of meditation. I saw somebody post a beautiful post on Facebook. I can't even remember the words, but he says, again, and we're not trying to be insensitive to people who are trapped and alone and feeling alone. Of course, that's not ideal. Of course, you should be out with people in the right time to connect. But about what's the mindset to make the best of the situation, to be healthiest through the situation. That's the distinction we're making. He said something like, those that are sitting in the house alone, bored. I can't remember how he said it. He was so simple. He said, that's only because you're focusing on your five senses only. But if you learn how to meditate, there's whole worlds within yourself and above yourself that you can explore right now. Even just to watch the feeling of, but I am alone and I am abandoned. I'm always alone and abandoned. Even to watch that everyone's having meaningful saves with other people, just to become aware of that, the hakara, the recognition of that, to allow that to be there, and to shift your mind into worlds, to shift your mind into your heart, to your greatest memories, your greatest successes, any moment of freedom that you've had in your life, to use the past or models or history or Hollywood movies even as emotional reference points of what freedom looks like, to explore what would your future look like if you were completely free to express your soul, without anything holding you back, to use visualization as a tool to do that, right? To really go through, I have this thing that I do 2 or 3 times a year. I used to be a filmmaker, and I have a very strong visual imagination, or I have a strong visual imagination, so I became a filmmaker. But when I wrote films, I could literally see the shot. I could walk through the film from beginning to end and see every shot and all the music cues. So when I was first becoming religious, there's a lot of the Balei Musa that used to use visualizations on the parsha of each week to really connect to it and fill it out, the Koyach Tzira. So I created for myself, Kriyas Yamsov, an entire movie. It literally goes for 90 minutes of the splitting of the sea. And it's all this clever twist and based on Kabbalah and a whole story about Nachshon ben Aminadav going into the water with his daughter and this whole thing that happens. And I can actually watch it shot by shot until I usually cry, and I usually have this kind of supernatural kind of energetic, flood of Mesiras Nefesh. And you can really feel in the details with colors, the koyach hachushi, the senses, until you bring these things alive. And the truth is, the more people know how to master these inner mindsets, they are never lonely, and they're always excited about being alone, because they can choose their world, and they can choose the world, and they can choose the future world that they want to enter into. So just be open to explore those things, be open to the potential of, how cool and fun and deep that you could go by having time to focus in that way. And for some people, they only know loneliness, and it's very hard on 48 hours notice to shift into that paradigm of, what it is to be alone. But I think what Gedale and I are saying is, it is not by definition imprisonment, right? There's a window to find yourself in there in a much deeper way. And I think, you know, that's the true freedom of the evening. You know, I always say, my Pesach Seder, that if you want true freedom tonight, you have to set yourself free from the enslavement of your expectations of what you want the Seder to be, right? I want it to be like this. I wanted to have this high, right? And, you know, if you can set yourself free from the world of expectations, then, you know, then you can go on the adventure of what's really happening now. And I think that's also part of the shift from loneliness to being alone.
Yeah, and it also, the loneliness thing, it triggers all the negative feelings. It just triggers when, you know, the Yetzer Hara has a great job of, you know, when you say I'm so lonely, and then it's going to remind you of all the other things, the other times you're alone. And it's just, we don't want to get into that state. We're getting out of Egypt. And our sages say, if you're not running out of Egypt, you're already back there. So we want to get out, not go right back.